Welcome back to another week of Just Gay Stuff podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Jess.
Now, I'm very, very excited to be in the podcast today with you.
I don't know if excited's the word to use.
Excited's not the right word.
This topic is a bit heavy.
It is, but the people who have been here from the beginning will know how much you are a true crime buff.
I don't know. Do they know? Have we really spoken that much about it?
I don't know, but in our original first episodes, we kind of have, really. I guess. I don't know. We've touched on it then.
When we've talked about when we wanted to start a podcast, I always said I really wanted to do a true crime podcast because everybody knows that when a girlie turns about 30, there's this true crime obsession just takes over and that's how we all sleep at night.
Is it just 30?
Yeah, I reckon.
Actually, yeah, that's true. That's like that meme where it's like you can't watch a scary horror movie, but you can watch the true crime and listen to true crime docos and podcasts to go to sleep.
And so I really wanted to do a true crime podcast, but let's be real, the market has oversaturated.
The market has been oversaturated. So we stuck with what we know, which is
being gay
stuff. Gay stuff. But I thought today I would combine those two worlds.
I am excited for this, yes.
Gay stuff and crime.
Which, as we all know, is not the most amazing thing.
No.
But we are combining my two favourite things in this episode, and Lauren has done an amazing job at putting this episode together.
Thank you.
So I'm really looking forward to what you've got.
Thank you. But before we dive in, I do have to put out a very, very big trigger warning. This episode is quite heavy. It contains discussions of violent crimes, homophobia, and murder. So if this is something that you aren't able to deal with or you're not ready to hear, please feel free to skip this episode, head to a lighter one, Worst First Dates or something, and join us for another time. Your well-being comes first to us.
And look, we all know that not everybody is into true crime, so feel free to skip this episode if you're not a true crimey, he, she, them or they. We have a bunch of other fun episodes that you can wrap your mind around.
Yeah,
so
just go check those ones out and come back for another fun one another time.
Also, just a disclaimer for this episode. Obviously, we all know that a lot of really bad things have happened to our queer community over the years. This is just bringing light to some of those things that maybe not all of us are aware of, but obviously we have been targeted before for just our sexuality, as everybody will know.
Yeah.
This is just giving the victims their story to be told as opposed to the person who did all the bad shit.
Yeah, and like their voices got taken away from them essentially, so they didn't get to tell.
So this is our little intertwiney crossover true crimey.
True crimey
podcast. It's not a fun episode, really.
No, it's not.
This is going to be a lot of information, and who are we talking about today?
So today we are covering the case of Colin Ireland, infamously known as the Gayslayer, in 1993, which is the year Lauren was born.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Hot connection.
Yeah, hot connection. He terrorised London's gay community, committing 5 brutal murders in just a few months.
See, so just from that intro, everybody knows that it's not going to be a light episode. This is maybe as true crimey as we're going to get.
I was going to say, this is probably the most in-depth true crimey one we've done.
Yeah, but Lauren has gone to a lot of effort. She's been back in high school writing this as an essay.
I have.
So let's see what we've got here.
All right, so I'm going to set the scene. Our story begins in the sweltering summer of 1993. London's gay community was gripped by a chilling wave of fear. A predator lurked in the shadows, targeting men in their own homes and turning spaces of safety into scenes of horror.
In their own homes.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
In their own homes.
I mean, we should be able to go anywhere and not feel fear, but when it's in your own home, like that is your sanctuary right there. And already someone coming into that. On a side note, I had a dream once that I opened my bottom drawer and there was a weapon in there.
Really?
And like I didn't own it.
Oh,
and
fuck.
Yeah, so then in my dream, I already knew that someone had been in my house and planted that.
Oh my God.
And I woke up feeling so violated.
Did you wake up being like that sweaty wake up when you're like, oh.
Nah, but definitely like
the palpitation?
Yeah, hyperventilating.
Jesus, I hate those ones. All right, diving back in. 5 victims met their brutal end, each left naked, bound, and with a noose still around their neck.
That's horrible.
A grim signature that sent shockwaves through the city. As detectives raced against time, the community was consumed by dread, knowing the killer could strike again at any moment. When the murderer was finally unmasked, his motive sent an even colder shiver down their spines. He did not kill out of hate or revenge, but the twisted thrill of infamy. His quest to be remembered as a serial killer left a devastating legacy in its wake.
In saying that though, so why did he target gay men if it wasn't through hate?
You'll get to that.
Oh,
we'll get to that.
Okay.
We've got it. Like you said, essay, 11 pages long. We are going to get the story through. All right. The chilling murders committed by Colin Ireland sent shockwaves through Britain and left an incredible mark on the LGBTQ plus community. In the 1990s, the Kern pub in West London was a hidden gem of the capital's gay scene. A dimly lit haven for those drawn to the S&M and bondage scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Back then, the Kern was more than just a bar. It was the destination for gay leather men. Mm-hmm. Its blacked out windows shielded patrons from prying eyes, and its industrial gritty interior offered a sanctuary where inhibitions were left at the door. Encounters were quite straightforward and unspoken. If you were there, you were likely shared the same interests. Strangers would strike up a conversation, and often it would seamlessly transition into intimate encounters.
Well, when you're all going somewhere for the same purpose, that would happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like going to a keys party where you all chuck your keys in the bowl. You know what you're there for.
You all know what you're there for. Yeah, exactly. But beneath its allure of freedom and anonymity, the Kern became an unwitting stage for island sinister motives, turning a safe space into a chilling hunting ground. On the evening of March 8th, 1993, Peter Walker, a respected assistant theatre director in London's West End, visited the Kern, a place he frequented and felt at home in as an openly gay man. Rumours suggested Walker had an interest in the S&M scene, which wasn't uncommon amongst the bar's regulars.
Well, when you're going there and you know what it's for. Or you know what the...
Yeah, you know what the vibe is going there.
Vibe is.
That's why they went there. It was their safe haven, not only as people are part of the LGBTQ plus community, but people who are into the bondage and S&M type of vibe.
And no kink shaming to be had in that space when everybody's there for the same reason. And we're talking about the early 90s.
Yeah, literally.
This was still not accepted at all.
No. That night, fate dealt a cruel hand when Walker accidentally spilled a drink on a stranger he had never seen before. A conversation sparked, and within hours, Walker extended an invitation to his apartment. The eerie part, because Walker willingly brought this man into his home, there were no signs of forced entry, a chilling reminder of the trust that would cost him his life.
That's terrible.
What began as a consensual encounter took a horrifying turn. Walker allowed himself to be tied to his bed frame, unaware of the sinister intentions lurking beneath the surface. Colin Ireland, the man he had invited in, revealed his true purpose. He wasn't there for sex, he was there to kill.
It's absolutely horrible.
It's also like, think about the fact that he unknowingly was like, yeah, I'm here for this whole bondage experience because that's how he got
So you wouldn't even...
off. So you wouldn't even think that...
Suspect anything.
And it wasn't until he was tied up naked to his bed that then Ireland was like, oh, I'm going to kill you now.
That's so bad.
Trapped and powerless, Walker could do nothing as Ireland calmly placed a plastic bag over his head and suffocated him to death, leaving behind a chilling legacy of betrayal and violence.
I just think you go somewhere and you feel safe. The thing is, this is the bottom line though. We aren't safe.
No.
And, you know, we talk about in true crime terms, nobody is safe. You can't do anything by yourself. Whether you're a man or a woman or non-binary or transgender, you cannot go anywhere and feel 100% like nothing is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Because there are terrible people in the world everywhere.
It's so sad.
We spoke about this over dinner.
Literally, because you're listening to another podcast at the moment.
The world is such a horrible place, and I know we've come a long way, but things in terms of like true crime and hate crime, it's the same. I feel like if anything, it's gotten worse. It has not gotten better.
Yeah, 100%. I think because a lot of people coming up in society now just don't care.
Yeah, but I think the only thing that may have gotten better listening to a lot of true crime, because I do listen to a lot of true crime, is the fact that, and I know that we have a really push and pull relationship with police, but I know that since working through a lot of the issues in society and we're a bit more accepted now, at least the police take the hate crimes seriously. There are so many cases out there, everyone, where police have looked the other way because it's a gay man, or they've looked the other way because they were trans, or because you weren't what was considered
The norm.
a normal person in society, you weren't human.
Yeah.
So that's just
Such bullshit.
we've come a long way since then. And I'm sure like maybe, I don't know, because you are only telling me this case now,
Yeah.
but maybe that happens here because
Yeah.
they were gay men. Maybe their cases were not taken as seriously as if they were straight men.
Yeah. So we'll jump straight back in.
Yeah.
After the murder, Ireland stayed in the apartment for hours, methodically erasing every trace of his presence. He meticulously wiped down every surface he had touched, ensuring no evidence was left behind. He even bagged up the clothes he wore during the crime, discarding them to cover his tracks. As dawn broke and the city came alive, Ireland calmly stepped out of the apartment at 7 a.m, merging seamlessly with the morning commuters. He was just another face in the crowd, his dark secret hidden behind an air of normalcy. But this was no one-off crime. Ireland's chilling obsession had already taken root. He had vowed to become a serial killer, and over the following weeks he would strike 4 more times, leaving a trail of terror and heartbreak in his quest for infamy.
That's the other thing. He's just another face in the crowd.
Yeah.
You can't
trust anyone.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I probably sound like I've listened to far too much true crime in
Well,
my
you
time.
have.
I definitely have.
You definitely have.
It's definitely tainted me to an extent, I'm not going to lie. But I think also...
Does it make you more aware of things
Definitely.
though? Yeah.
I feel like I'm definitely more vigilant. One side of the coin, I'm definitely more vigilant. On the other side, I still have that stupidity that's like, it wouldn't be me.
Oh, everybody has that. It's that naivety, I think, that you're like, that couldn't possibly happen to me.
Well, I think we all think that we're immortal in some sense, you know,
Yeah.
like we hear about all these terrible things that happen and all these stories, but do we ever think that it's going to be us? No.
I think it's also that trust that, you know, you try and hope for the best and hope to see the good in human nature. And unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Yeah. More times than not, it's definitely not the case.
Yeah. In the early hours of the morning, Detective Finnegan was woken by a call from uniformed officers. When he stepped into the apartment, the chilling scene before him sent a shiver down his spine. Peter Walker's lifeless body lay naked on the bed, covered by a duvet. But what caught Finnegan's attention were the teddy bears, arranged around Walker's body in a grotesque 69 position.
That's disgusting.
I did warn everybody this was a very heavy and brutal murder.
Yeah.
It was an unsettling touch that felt both bizarre and sinister. The oddities didn't stop there. The victim's wrists and ankles bore deep ligature marks, which is the rope.
Yeah.
Mark.
So if you have like rope or cuffs or something. Bound, yeah.
Yet no ligature could be found. This strange detail only deepened the mystery. Upon further investigation, police discovered Walker's bank card was missing, and a closer look at his account revealed money had been withdrawn shortly after his death. It wasn't just a murder, it was theft.
This is where someone has like covered their tracks in saying like, okay, Colin Ireland, you're a piece of shit. But
Yeah.
also he wanted to be famous for being a serial killer because clearly he obviously didn't have the talent to be actually famous. So he chose infamy instead.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh, this is a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah.
But he had every intention.
Oh, yeah. His whole thing was like...
Nothing went wrong.
No, nothing went wrong. He methodically and meticulously planned it out. Like the intent for murder was there.
This is the thought, and I want everybody to have a think about this. I've brought this up with friends and they have divided opinions. But I think when you are tried for attempted murder, should you not like face the same sentence as if you had murdered someone? Because like you were hoping to murder them, you just failed at it.
Yeah.
So like why is the sentence not the same? Because you failed
you didn't
at it.
succeed?
You still wanted to hurt the other person and take their life.
Yeah.
That was your intention. So why shouldn't you serve that intention?
Actually, that's true. It should be the same.
Yeah. Like I
thing.
understand why it's not. The person lived. But that person who wanted to harm them,
But
their
they still
intention
had the
was
intent.
still...
It'd be different if it was like an accidental murder and that's just homicide or whatever it's
Well, no,
called.
that's manslaughter.
Manslaughter, sorry. Yeah, manslaughter.
Yeah. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. The act of financial reimbursement became a disturbing pattern in Ireland's early crimes. He would often steal from his victims, a cold and calculated way of covering the costs of his twisted killings.
Oh, so they paid for it as well.
Yeah, you paid for your own death.
So that's fucked up.
It's fucked.
That's fucked up.
These financial clues would later prove crucial in tracking the killer's movements and motives.
Well, I'm glad that one thing was the thing to take you down.
Yeah. The detectives hoped that the bank transactions, combined with any physical evidence from the scene, would finally lead them to the killer. But as they dug deeper, frustration mounted. There was little to go on. Whoever was responsible for Peter's death had been meticulous in covering their tracks, erasing any trace of themselves. The case seemed to be slipping through their fingers. Then a break came from an unexpected source. Shortly after Peter's body was discovered, a call was made to a charity group called the Samaritans. A man speaking in a calm yet chilling manner expressed concern about 2 dogs locked inside the apartment. When asked how he knew this, he delivered a bone-chilling confession. I put them there and I've killed the person in the flat.
See, he just wanted people to know it was him.
Yeah.
Also, just saying like they thought the case was going to go cold. In the 90s, they had CCTV, did they not?
We'll get to that.
Okay. My little true crime...
Your true crime brain is thinking of all the options. You're like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that?
It's like alien pinging.
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on a minute.
That's why throughout the whole weeks of me doing up this podcast episode, I'm like, I just want to tell you so many things because I know what your brain would be like.
Well, now's the time.
Yeah. It was a chilling moment. This stranger wasn't just a witness, he was a murderer, revealing a connection to the crime that would send the investigation into uncharted territory. The race to find him was now on.
I reckon that would be worse when you're law enforcement. The killer actually antagonizing
he's taunting
you.
them, right? Yeah. I feel like we've watched many a SVU case of this.
It's too much, honestly.
Detectives quickly realised that in order to crack the case, they would have to forge a delicate partnership with London's gay community.
Which would have been a massive thing back then because...
Yeah. It was only 1993.
Yeah, early.
But there was a major obstacle standing in their way. Fear.
Yep.
Always is. Mm-hmm. The community was deeply distrustful of the police and with good reason.
Yep.
Only 6 months prior, which is not a long time, officers had raided a different pub where a drag queen was performing, arriving in full rubber gloves, their actions fueled by irrational fear of AIDS.
That's such disgusting behaviour, honestly. Yeah. You feel like you have to handle another human being with rubber gloves. Fuck off.
Yeah. Given this history, it was no surprise that the community's response to law enforcement was one of hostility and suspicion. You would feel that because you would be like, well, I don't know whether I'm actually trusting you for this crime or whether you're just setting us up again for something else.
Are you trying to butter us up because you're going to take us down in a month?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The very sight of police officers at a gay venue sent ripples of panic through the crowd.
As it would.
Yeah. Trust had been shattered, and for the detectives, earning that trust would prove to be a difficult and risky challenge that could make or break this investigation.
Well, if you think about it, if you're a queer person in a queer space that is not really allowed by any section of society, like you're literally going against every grain of society to just be present there. And then the very people that try and take you down daily now essentially want your help, you would be so in two minds.
And the fact that, you know, we said at the beginning, all of this started in a hidden underground pub where they've had to literally hide.
Yeah.
The investigation into Peter Walker's death became a pivotal moment, sparking a reluctant cooperation between police and London's gay community. Both sides shared the same goal, to catch Peter's killer, but the spirit of collaboration was quickly undermined by a devastating legal ruling that came just a day after Peter's body was discovered.
Oh, hit me with it. Come on.
The law lords declared that men engaging in consensual same-sex relations could automatically be charged with sexual assault simply because they were gay.
Fuck off.
I feel that. This ruling ignited a deep sense of fear and distrust within the community. Why should they help the police, many wondered, when doing so could put them at risk of being punished themselves?
Exactly
we
what
literally
we just
said that. Without the support of the gay community, detectives were left to flounder. The investigation into Peter's death slowly stalled, the case slipping into the shadows.
Can I just point out, even though that law was passed, I am quite proud of how the police wanted so badly to catch a murderer, knowing full well it was like to do with the queer community.
Yeah.
Because as we said before, no law enforcement was ever so gung-ho about, you know, hate crimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hate crimes against the queer community.
The queer community,
and like sex workers too. Everyone was just so disposable and that was fine. It was so
sad.
shit.
But then, as if fate had a cruel plan of its own, more murders began to unfold, each one more chilling than the last. The killer was still out there, and the investigation, now even more complex, was about to take a darker turn. Mm-hmm. When we delve into the lives of serial killers, and I know that we've heard from other like podcasts before they talk about this, we talk about a common thread that often emerges, which is a traumatic upbringing.
Yeah.
There's always something.
A quick shout out to one of my favorite true crime podcasts here, Morbid. Ash and Elena always say, when you learn about the trauma that the child went through, the serial killer being the child, you feel for the child, you don't feel for the adult.
Serial killer.
Plenty of people have had traumatic upbringings and don't do this shit.
I'm literally about to say that. Colin Ireland's story was no exception. Born in 1954 in Dartford, Kent, his life began with abandonment. His biological father walked out on the family shortly after his birth, leaving his 17-year-old mother to raise him alone.
Wow, she was young.
So a child raising a child, essentially.
Yeah. That's hard in itself.
Yeah. Ireland's childhood was a revolving door of instability. His mother's string of partners and frequent moves meant he was constantly uprooted, never settling into a stable life. Each new stepfather and every new school deepened his isolation, casting him into the role of the perpetual outsider, a loner by circumstance rather than choice.
I so don't understand why he targeted gay men, though.
Yeah, no. Neither.
Usually things like, and this is just pure speculation on behalf of like other crimes that I've listened to, a male child being raised by a single mother and has experienced abandonment from both sides, a father who's walked out or a parent who's walked out, and then the mum who's kind of like jumped from partner to partner. It usually seems to like build this, and obviously this is a blanket statement, it doesn't happen to everybody, but it usually seems to build this like resentment towards the woman figure, even though she was still there. And like, look, I don't know his mum, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's surprising to me that he went for homosexual men.
Yeah.
That's such a left field
you thought
smack
he
in
would
the
go
face.
for the women?
I did, because it's kind of like, you know, you experience that abandonment so you don't have a father figure, and usually the child blames the mother for that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they become like women haters.
That's true.
Some of these people. Anyway, carry on.
Carrying on. As a teenager, Ireland's troubles escalated. His adolescence was marred by run-ins with the law, leading to stints in the Young Offenders Institution for petty crimes like robbery, burglary, and fraud. Yet at this point, there was no indication of the darkness brewing within him. His later penchant for sadism and bondage was an unseen shadow, completely off the radar of the detectives. A horrifying twist that no one could have predicted from his early criminal record.
Yeah, but bondage and S&M and stuff, that's a kink. Like anyone can have that.
Anyone can be into that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to kill someone afterwards. Yeah.
See, this is where some people I know like to blur the lines between these things. They're completely separate. You can have kinks about you and not hurt other people. Let's just put it at that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're fast forwarding a little bit to his marriage.
Oh, he actually got married.
He got married twice, actually.
Wow.
So after his first marriage crumbled due to an affair.
No surprise there.
No, but I mean, when you've seen your mum have revolving people as well.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Colin,
I suppose that instability, hey? Yeah.
Colin Ireland sought a fresh start in Devon. It was there that he crossed paths with Janet Young, a pub owner with sharp wit and commanding presence. Their meeting was as unsettling as it was unforgettable. The first time Janet saw Colin, he loomed in the doorway of her pub, dressed head to toe in soldier's camouflage, despite having no military background. What the?
Fantasist.
His imposing stature and eerie stillness caused the entire room to fall silent, all eyes turning toward him. Slowly he made his way to Janet at the bar. The two spent the entire evening engrossed in conversation. By January 1990, they were married. That's crazy. Their relationship was a perfect storm of control. Both Colin and Janet were extreme control freaks, feeding off each other's need for dominance. But when two people obsessed with control clash, it can lead to an explosive result.
I can imagine. It's like fire meeting fire.
Yeah.
Explosions.
When one felt their grip slipping, the response was often violent, a way to instill fear and wrestle back the power.
Even from the wife. Well, at least she kind of stood up for herself, I guess.
Yeah. This volatile dynamic foreshadowed darker days ahead as Colin's need for control began to manifest in terrifying ways. Maybe that's why he went, I don't know, I still don't know why they're homosexual men, but...
Maybe he thought they were just an easy target.
Yeah. Janet learned the extent of Colin's need for control in a chilling first-hand encounter. The couple ran a bed and breakfast, and one night, after a heated argument, Janet emerged victorious, a rare moment where she had wrestled control from him, but Colin couldn't tolerate the loss. Enraged, he grabbed Janet and physically threw her out of their bedroom and into the hallway right outside one of the guest rooms. Humiliated and terrified, she fled into one of the spare bedrooms, desperately trying to find refuge. But Colin wasn't finished. He pounded on the door, and when he forced his way in, he unscrewed the light bulb, plunging the room into darkness.
That's terrifying.
From the shadows, Colin began a sinister psychological game. He moved silently around the room, his voice cutting through the dark. "I'm over here," he said, only to whisper moments later, "Now I'm over here."
No, it's like a terrifying game of Marco Polo.
He never laid a hand on her, but the atmosphere was suffocating and the fear was palpable. Janet was paralyzed. Her mind was racing with thoughts of what might come next.
Yeah, she probably thought her life was in danger.
It wasn't a physical violence that subdued her. It was the sheer terror of what he was capable of. The fear of violence, as they say, is often more powerful than the act of violence itself.
Mm-hmm.
Colin had regained control, and Janet was left with a haunting realization of just how far he would go to maintain his dominance.
Imagine being married to somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I know people listening probably have been.
Yeah.
And thank the lucky stars you're still here.
Yeah.
It must be so terrifying.
Yeah. We're very grateful that you are still here.
Yeah.
It didn't take long for Colin to tire of his life in Devon. Just a few months into their marriage, cracks began to show.
You think?
Yeah. After the Easter holidays, Janet decided to visit friends in London, leaving Colin to fend for himself. She expected her husband to pick her up on the Sunday, but when he didn't show, worry set in. Fearing the worst, she called local hospitals and police, desperate for answers, but no one had seen or heard from him.
Why would you even worry about him?
No, neither. I don't know. When Janet finally made her way back home, the reality of what had happened hit her like a freight train. The house was empty. Colin had cleared it out completely. As the pieces fell into place, she discovered he'd taken her bank card, drained her account at the ATM, and disappeared without a trace. He left her utterly penniless.
Of course he did. That's financial control as well.
Yeah. Janet didn't even have enough money to catch the bus home. She had to call her parents, humiliated, to ask for a loan just to get back.
Just to catch the bus.
Yeah. Colin's betrayal didn't end there. His actions forced Janet into bankruptcy, leaving her and her children homeless. They were left with no choice but to move into a shelter. Their lives upended by a man who had vowed to protect and provide. It was calculated, cruel, and abandonment. And Janet was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered world. I did tell you it was a long one. Just days after abandoning Janet, Colin resurfaced in Essex, where he secured a job at a homeless shelter. From the start, he made no effort to hide his past, openly admitting that he had served time in prison. But it wasn't just his criminal history that raised eyebrows, it was his toxic demeanour.
So what, he had served time in prison?
Yeah, because remember in his early childhood, he served time in young juvie
for
robbery and fraud and stuff. Colin's narrow-minded views and blatant homophobia quickly became apparent.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there we go. That's where it comes from. He often voiced his disdain for the LGBTQ plus community, making it clear he found homosexuality abhorrent. His opinions were laced with disturbing aggression that unsettled many of those around him. The shelter housed its share of rowdy individuals, and Colin was never one to shy away from intimidation. Once he claimed he could get rid of them by shoving pool balls down their throats, a chilling glimpse into his violent tendencies. As if that wasn't enough, Colin's behaviour towards female staff members turned predatory. Reports surfaced of him inappropriately touching some of the women, crossing boundaries without a hesitation.
What a disgusting individual, honestly.
His unsettling conduct eventually became too much, and the shelter had no choice but to ask him to leave.
Surprised they waited that long.
Same. With no ties holding him back, Colin began to take weekend trips into London. It was during these excursions that he discovered the Kern pub, a well-known hotspot within the gay community. What might have seemed like a casual visit at first soon became the groundwork for his sinister plans. A dark chapter was about to unfold.
So this was before he met. Okay.
This was all his pre-life before he met Peter Walker.
So this is where we're up to where.
So now we're back into the future.
Mm-hmm.
After a 2-month gap, Colin realised he had assumingly gotten away with Peter Walker's murder. His killing spree was set to start again. On the 28th of May, he met 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn in the Kern and accompanied Dunn back to his place.
Run Dunn.
Yeah, run Dunn. Once Dunn was inside and tied to his bed, Colin Ireland then used a cigarette lighter to torture Dunn until he revealed his PIN number for his bank card. Once Ireland was satisfied, he strangled Dunn with the length of a cord. After Dunn's death, Colin again meticulously cleaned the apartment before stealing money from his victim's bank account. Christopher Dunn was living in Willesden and was a single man living alone. He was found face down, naked on the bed. The pathologist said he wasn't quite sure about the cause of death, as it could have been a manual strangulation through a homosexual sex act that went wrong.
No. Why does everybody think that? And it's not just down to within our queer community. I've seen plenty of cases where in heterosexual couples, it was rough and it went wrong. No. People that know how to do that know not to do it wrong.
Yeah. The uncertainty surrounding Christopher Dunn's death meant the police inquiry into the murder was wound down and Colin Ireland had gotten away with it again.
That's the part I was waiting for. There's the kicker.
By June 1993, Colin Ireland was ready to strike again. The police, still grappling with limited evidence, hadn't connected the dots between his first two murders. Their investigation was hampered by the secrecy surrounding the community Ireland preyed upon. Individuals forced to live deeply private lives due to societal prejudice.
Yep, that's what we always talk about.
In the underground gay scene, particularly among those drawn to the S&M, there was a silent code of recognition. Specific clothing or subtle cues signalled shared interests, creating a sense of belonging but also making them identifiable to predators, like Ireland.
Except you would have had to immerse yourself into the community to know what those things were. And I'm pretty sure, remember on Drag Race, I'm pretty sure one of those things used to be like a handkerchief or a bandana around the wrist or on your jeans or something.
Mandy Moobs did something.
Mandy Moobs.
Recently.
Yeah.
For him, it was a hunter's paradise, a place where trust and vulnerability collided. During this time, the gay community often relied on a fragile trust to navigate their personal lives, especially when it came to intimacy with strangers. Colin Ireland saw this trust not as something to respect, but as an opportunity. In his cold and calculating mind, the community's openness was a weakness to exploit. To him, they were easy pickings.
There we go. Called it.
You did. And he took full advantage of their need for connection, turning it into a tool for his own twisted agenda.
Yeah, that's so fucked up.
You called it from the beginning. Yeah.
Also, can I just point out, I feel like we've talked about this before on the podcast about how even when we've grown up and society has come a long way since even the early 90s and we know how it's had to develop over time. But even for us to try and go, I wonder if that girl's gay or if I start to flirt with her, if she's going to then condemn me.
Yeah.
So it's like you're really putting yourself out on the line.
It's like what we said. It's such a vulnerability to be like.
Imagine then having that thought process of, I could also be arrested if that person then dobs on me.
Yeah, literally.
Like there is so much trust that has to be there.
Yeah, this case is wild. On June 4th, 1993, detectives received the chilling news of yet another murder, the third in a string of unexplained killings. This time, the victim was 35-year-old Perry Bradley, an American businessman working in London. His body had been discovered in a Kensington flat, and the scene was hauntingly familiar.
So they know by now it's the same guy.
When the detectives arrived, they found Bradley's lifeless body meticulously arranged on the bed. He was bound with a noose still around his neck, and there were no signs of struggle. The scene was eerily calm, almost ritualistic, with subtle clues suggesting a sexual motive. The positioning of his body and the careful staging left investigators with the sense that this was no impulsive act, but the work of a calculating killer. Contacting Bradley's family only deepened the mystery. They insisted there were no indications of homosexuality in Perry's life, leaving detectives to wonder why he had become a target.
Well, as if his family was going to know.
Yeah, exactly.
In that day and age, like we just said, you would be hard-pressed telling anybody out of fear.
Yeah, literally. And this was like a renowned businessman as well. So of course he's going to be caught out. Yeah. The lack of connections between the victims stifled the investigation, with 3 separate teams working independently on the cases. So this is like 3 different London investigators.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he kind of went...
He went all over London, or different parts of...
Like Kent. What was it? Kent, Sussex.
Essex.
Essex, sorry. I always get those
Kent,
two mixed
Essex, Willesden, something.
Kensington.
Kensington.
Yeah.
It seemed like a puzzle with no edges to guide them. The breakthrough came when detectives traced Bradley's final movements and discovered that he had visited the Kern pub before his death. Suddenly, a pattern began to emerge, linking all 3 murders to the same shadowy corner of London's gay scene. For the first time, the pieces of Colin Ireland's twisted game were beginning to fall into place.
Do you think that everybody knew that the Kern was a gay pub, like even if you weren't gay?
I don't know, but I think speculation would start to come out.
Yeah, true. Because I was just thinking,
especially if the gay community's starting to talk, like how frequent would you still be to go there? Oh, this happened to this guy when he frequented here. And
yeah, but I was just thinking you could be a businessman from out of town and not know and just think it's a pub and go in there.
That's true.
And
it was a very, like we said, a hidden underground, so you wouldn't really know that it was a queer.
Oh, yeah. Or, you know, people in the queer community could have also like lured somebody there. Like
true.
If they thought maybe, you know, they didn't think this person was straight and they were just like trying to see, and then like maybe that guy wasn't gay, and then
who knows?
I was just thinking outside the box, everyone.
Just 3 days after Perry Bradley's death, the nightmare escalated. Police received a chilling call about a fourth murder, this time in London's East End. The victim was Andrew Collier, a 33-year-old warden at a block of flats in northeast London, openly gay and HIV positive. Collier was well known in the community and a frequent visitor to the Cairn.
Oh, these poor guys, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It was there on the night of June 7th that he crossed paths with Colin Ireland. What happened next was nothing short of macabre. 2 days later, Collier's body was discovered in his bedroom. The scene was grotesque, a dark display of Ireland's escalating cruelty. Collier lay lifeless on his bed, a dead cat draped eerily across his body.
I hate when they bring animals into it.
A condom had been forced into his mouth.
Oh.
A disturbing and calculated act meant to humiliate even in death.
That's so fucked up. Why are people like this? This is ridiculous.
This is not a person, this is a monster.
Yeah. With
each murder, Ireland's methods became more and more depraved, as if he were taunting the world to take notice. For detectives, the growing body count wasn't just a race against time, it was a battle against a predator who seemed to thrive on the horror he left in his wake. Well, that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Detectives quickly noticed the chilling similarities between Andrew Collier's murder and Peter Walker's.
And they were both from the same area.
So now it's the same police investigating this. Both victims had been robbed. Walker and Collier's keys were both missing. But the real breakthrough came when investigators learned about a violent street brawl that had erupted outside the pub across the road from Collier's flat. In the chaos, curiosity got the better of Colin Ireland and he lifted one of Collier's windows to get a glimpse of the confrontation. This seemingly trivial act would prove to be his downfall. When police examined the scene, they found a fingerprint on the window.
Good.
A crucial piece of evidence.
Fucking gotcha.
About time. For the first time, they had a solid lead. But in 1993,
just about to say this.
Yeah. The technology to match fingerprints against computerized database didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
For now, the clue hung in the balance and Ireland remained under the radar. Detectives were left in limbo. Despite the breakthrough, they couldn't act on the fingerprint until the suspect was apprehended. It would take time, but Ireland's twisted reign of terror was beginning to unravel, one crime scene at a time.
Yeah, so unless they had someone to match the fingerprint to, they couldn't run it through a database because the database
didn't have any data
exist yet.
Yeah. As the investigation into the string of murders across London continued, the separate teams working on each case began to notice eerie similarities.
Alleluia.
Yeah. Slowly, the detectives started communicating with each other and exchanging their findings. It didn't take long for them to connect the dots. Each of the 5 brutal killings were linked. The realization hit them hard. They were dealing with a serial killer.
This happens all the time, right? Like law enforcement like to do things on their own and they won't exchange information.
Why?
Because they don't want to have this thought that they had to rely on another section of law enforcement to get their job done. They want to just do it all themselves.
Ego thing.
Yeah.
In a high-stakes meeting, detectives from all of the cases gathered in one common room, determined to uncover the full scope of the crimes. They discussed re-examining the evidence, searching for any overlooked connections. But when they turned to the case of Christopher Dunn, one detective delivered an unexpected blow. That might be a bit hard as he's currently being cremated as we speak.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Despite the setback, there was still enough material from the Dunn investigation to work with. Later that afternoon, the detectives finally confirmed the chilling truth. They were not just chasing one isolated killer, they were up against a predator who had been hiding in plain sight.
They usually are hiding in plain sight. That's what's so eerie and disgusting about them.
But the final piece of the puzzle would come from an unlikely source, Colin Ireland himself.
The first piece of the puzzle came from him.
Yeah.
So it would only be fitting that he ends it as well.
Yeah. His twisted need for recognition and his growing confidence would soon lead him straight into the hands of the law.
Good.
But not before leaving a trail of terror that will forever haunt London's gay community.
Unfortunately, he got away with it for far too long.
Yeah. On the evening of Saturday, June 12th, an unsettling call came into the Batsy station. The officer on duty answered, only to be met with a voice that seemed almost casual.
I hate that. So chilling.
Yeah. The man on the other end inquired why the Peter Walker investigation had tapered off, asking, why aren't you interested in the death of a gay man?
Why aren't you?
He didn't stop there. The caller went on to claim the responsibility for not just Walker's murder, but also the killings of Perry Bradley in Kensington, Christopher Dunn in Whistletone, and Andrew Collier in East London. Then, in a chilling twist, the caller revealed his plan. I'm going to keep killing, he declared. I made it my New Year's Eve resolution. I want to be a serial killer and I'll continue until you catch me. What the fuck?
What on earth would ever be so wrong with you that you thought that this was the thing to do?
Yeah, I don't know. When police asked, why are you doing this? Colin Ireland responded with an eerie nonchalance. I've read a lot of serial killer books and I wondered if it could be done, if anyone would get away with it.
I mean, I've often wondered about the perfect murder too, but I don't go out and do fucking doing it.
Yeah. For Ireland, the murders weren't driven by hatred or a twisted need for revenge. They were a dark, twisted experiment.
Disgusting.
His only goal was to see if he could truly outsmart the law, pushing the boundaries of his own sinister curiosity. This was no longer about the victims. It was about Colin proving a point, and he was daring the police to stop him.
So just go rob a 7-Eleven. Don't hurt someone.
Yeah.
I mean, don't rob a 7-Eleven either.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, like, if you want to try and outsmart the law, you don't have to take lives to do it.
Yeah, exactly. With most serial killers, there's often a disturbing desire to taunt and toy with the law enforcement, which we said at the beginning.
Yeah.
And Colin Ireland was no exception. In fact, he practically relished the game, going as far as to broadcast his crimes to the police in a bid for infamy and notoriety that comes with being labelled as a serial killer.
I mean, he's not the only one who's done that, and he won't be the last.
No, he won't. What truly fueled his rage, however, was the fact that the police hadn't yet made the connection between his first two murders.
Mm-hmm.
His kills had slipped under the radar, and that was a frustration that gnawed at him. Ireland wanted nothing more than to be recognised as a serial killer, and he knew that the key to the recognition was the media's attention that would follow. In his twisted mind, the only way to ensure that attention was for the police to publicly acknowledge the series of murders he had committed. He pushed for confirmation from the authorities, attempting to manipulate them into connecting his crimes, eager to see his name splashed across the headlines. On June 15th, the police finally responded, holding a midnight press conference where they revealed the chilling truth. A serial killer was on the loose in London. They issued an urgent warning to the gay community, alerting them to the growing danger, but tragically that warning came too late. Just days after the public announcement, Colin Ireland would claim his fifth and final victim, leaving behind a trail of devastation that he could no longer be ignored. By mid-June 1993, Colin Ireland had already claimed the lives of 4 gay men in London, but his bloodlust was far from satisfied. On June 15th, in yet another chilling phone call to the police, he confessed to another murder. This time, his victim was 36-year-old Emmanuel Spiteri, whom he had met at the tube station after spotting him earlier that evening at the Kern. Ireland lured Spiteri back to his flat in Catford, where after stealing his bank card and PIN number, he strangled him to death. But Ireland wasn't finished yet. In a grotesque attempt to obliterate any trace of his crime, he set Spiteri's flat on fire.
Just escalating.
Yeah. However, the flames were quickly subdued, leaving behind a scene of devastation and evidence still intact.
Good.
It wasn't long before Spiteri's landlady discovered the body, and police quickly connected the dots. Like the others, Spiteri had been a regular at the Kern pub. The breakthrough came when investigators realised how close Spiteri's flat was to the Kern, and the only reasonable way to travel between the two locations was by train. What made this connection even more significant was that the station nearest to Spiteri's home had recently been equipped with CCTV cameras.
Yes, the CCTV. Come on.
This new piece of evidence could be the key to finally identifying the killer who had evaded capture for so long. For 10 grueling hours, detectives pored over CCTV footage, desperately searching for any clue that could lead them to the elusive killer. Then, as if by fate, they caught a break. There in the background of the footage was Colin Ireland, his distinct frame and posture unmistakable.
Good.
The victim, Emmanuel Spiteri, was seen in the frame, and Ireland's presence was now undeniable. With this new piece of evidence in hand, the police released the footage to the public, hoping that someone might recognise Ireland or provide a tip that would lead to his capture. The footage wasn't perfect, his face was slightly distorted and the quality wasn't crystal clear, but his height, build and demeanour stood out enough for those who might know him to come forward.
I'm just thinking, like, who would know him? He was such a
Loner.
Yeah,
exactly.
He was so isolated.
What followed was a flood of calls.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose people that go to the Kern would know who he was because he was there
all the time. Yeah. The gay London policing group, called the Gallop, was inundated with hundreds of inquiries, each one fueling the hope that the killer would finally be caught. But while the detectives scrambled to track down leads, Colin Ireland was carrying on with his life in Southend, watching the chaos unfold from the sidelines.
I thought he wanted his name in the paper. I thought
think
they wanted
he liked
it to be his name.
I think he did, but I think he liked the game, the thrill of it.
To be elusive
To be elusive and the taunting part. One late evening, as Colin sat on the couch with a friend, the news broadcasted updates on the so-called Gayslayings, the string of murders that had rocked the community. Colin, calm and collected, turned to his friend and casually asked, "What do you think of the Gayslayings?" How creepy to know he was in your house.
Oh, yeah.
His friend, dismissive and unbothered, shrugged and muttered, "Oh, just another nutter on the loose." Colin simply chuckled in his response, his own dark secrets still hidden in plain sight.
I didn't think he'd have any friends.
No, neither.
People that hurt people are hurt. Like, I thought he wouldn't have anyone to confide in.
As the media frenzy surrounding the Gayslayings grew, Colin Ireland couldn't shake the feeling that the net was tightening around him. A few of his associates perhaps unwittingly pointed out the danger, saying things like, "Hey Colin, that could have been you." So did they know that he went to the Kern pub? Is that what that is?
So that, yeah.
Yeah, what?
But also were they being like, "Hey Colin, you're gay. That could have been you."
Yeah, like what? One evening, as one of Colin's friends cooked in the kitchen, his gaze fell upon a newspaper spread out on the counter. He paused, staring at the image of a man on the front page before muttering, "That looks a lot like Colin." He quickly shrugged it off, thinking little of it. But when reporters showed up at his door a few days later, the realization hit him hard. Oh yeah, that definitely was Colin.
Wow.
Then came a peculiar encounter. Colin showed up unannounced at this friend's house asking for a ride. His demeanour was off. There was something in his eyes, something unsettling. His friend's daughter was in the car with them. As they arrived at the house, Colin made a strange request. And I think this little girl's like probably only 8 or 6 or something.
Okay.
"Do you want to see the gerbils?" he asked the little girl. She, perhaps not sensing the danger, nodded in an innocent curiosity. But the father, sensing something was wrong, immediately intervened. Without hesitation, he grabbed his daughter's hand and pulled her away from Colin, telling her they had to leave. As they drove off, the weight of what had just transpired hung heavily in the air. That would be the last time that father ever saw Colin Ireland. Realising the walls were closing in, Colin Ireland decided to take matters into his own hands, playing the game on his own terms until the very end. He visited his solicitor in Southend, where he signed an affidavit explaining his presence in the CCTV footage with Emmanuel Spiteri. According to Colin, he wasn't the killer. He was simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah, right.
He told his solicitor that he and Spiteri had met at the Kern pub, then boarded the train together. But when they arrived at Spiteri's home, Colin claimed there was another man there. Unwilling to engage in a threesome, Colin said he left the scene immediately and spent the night sleeping in a nearby churchyard. It was a story that seemed just plausible enough to confuse those desperate for answers. But Ireland's calm, almost rehearsed delivery only raised more questions about the man behind the facade.
For someone who was so homophobic, he was so open about being seen in this gay space.
Yeah, no. But then is it that internalized homophobia?
It would have to be.
Thing?
Nobody hates queer people and doesn't have internalized homophobia.
Yeah. Unfortunately for Colin Ireland, his carefully crafted story began to unravel when detectives noticed something peculiar in the background of his phone calls. The unmistakable sound of the train station. With this new lead, police grew more confident that they were closing in on their suspect. Acting on advice from his solicitor, Ireland was encouraged to call the police himself, a move that would ultimately seal his fate. Detectives wasted no time arriving at Colin's lawyer's office, where they arrested him and began their interrogation. The breakthrough came when police were able to obtain Ireland's fingerprints.
There we go.
Comparing them to those found at Andrew Collier's apartment. They matched perfectly.
Ta-da.
Ta-da. This evidence tied Ireland to Spiteri's murder and confirmed his presence at Collier's flat. The investigators now had the key piece of the puzzle they needed. Despite this, they initially decided to charge him with only 2 of the murders, as they knew Ireland craved the notoriety, and by limiting the charges, they hoped to stir frustration and lure him into further revealing his dark intentions. With the trap set, the detectives patiently waited to see how he would react.
That's a good plan. Because I was thinking when you said that they would have only charged him with the 2 that they would have known that they were going to get him on, because otherwise, like, the other ones get thrown out without enough evidence and then those people never get justice.
Yeah, no, they were waiting for justice, and I think because they had worked out that he was a serial killer that was so obsessed with infamy and wanting to be famous and wanting to be known as a serial killer after all these, like, tauntings and everything, they were like, let's just wait and see what unfolds.
They knew he'd spill his guts.
Yeah, of course. Frustrated by being charged with only 2 murders, Colin's need for recognition began to consume him.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You just played into the hand.
Yeah, exactly. The coppers got you on that one, mate. 3 to 4 weeks later, during a transfer to the magistrate court, he turned to his escorting officer and casually stated, "I want to confess." The officer took brief notes, unaware that they were about to unlock the truth. Ireland was then taken to the police station, where a new video system was in place to record his confession. This is, like, insane to me. Can you think about, like, from the beginning, they had no evidence. They only had paper thing to then CCTV to then now this. For a long time, he denied everything. But in a typical serial killer fashion, he eventually folded. They are notorious for keeping their cards close to their chest until they realize the police hold almost all the aces. It was at that point that Ireland finally revealed the truth. But there was no remorse in his words. Instead, he seemed to almost gloat about his actions. Relishing the dark label he had so desperately craved, Colin Ireland had become exactly what he had set out to be, a serial killer.
You know, he could have been like a banker or a baker or a musician.
Yeah.
He could have been anything.
Yeah. Colin Ireland pleaded guilty to 5 murders. His actions deemed so heinous that the judge sentenced him to 5 consecutive life terms with no possibility of release.
Good.
The weight of his crimes was captured in the judge's chilling words. To take 1 life is an outrage, but to take 5 lives is carnage.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
2 decades after Ireland's arrest, the legacy of his killing spree still looms large. The police have completely overhauled their investigative methods and crucially built a strong and trusting relationship with the gay community, something that had been fractured during Ireland's reign of terror.
Do you think that if it wasn't fractured and, like, homosexuality was never illegal, that this would have gone on for so long?
No.
Yeah, neither.
I think that if the police and the gay community had trust from the beginning, it would have been stopped straight away.
Yeah.
Colin Ireland passed away in 2012, his life coming to a natural end behind bars. Ugh, they should have just got rid of him. But the scars he left behind, both in the community and the investigation process, remain as a somber reminder of his twisted pursuit of notoriety.
Yeah, wow.
Well, that was a long one, but that is the story of Colin Ireland, the Gayslayer. And while such a very harrowing time for our community in London to have dealt with this, it was also such an important one as it shows how far we have come with the relationships between our community, the LGBTQA+,
the LGBTQA
community, and the police.
Well done on your research.
Thank you. It was a long one, but I was very intrigued to tell you this case.
Do you know if this is the largest LGBTQ serial killing?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is the most notarized, largest LGBTQIA plus serial killing in the research that I've found. I don't know, other people might have other ones.
Wow. Hate crimes are terrible crimes. Any crime is a terrible crime.
Any crime is a terrible
But you know what? When it's against your community, you feel it so deeply.
It's so personal. But I think that's the whole point of this whole story, and for it to be told. Unfortunately, he got what he desired, which was the infamy and
what
his
a disgusting
his
excuse
story
for a human
to be lived and haunt the police in the London community, I should say. But the positive thing is that now there's such a trusting relationship between London's police force and the gay community.
I really hope that, you know, our complicated relationships with the police can progress past all of these things, you know, where we haven't been able to trust them and, You know, obviously those scars run deep.
Yeah.
But hopefully we are so humanized now in comparison to the past.
Yeah. Exactly.
So hopefully that just continues and everybody just wants to be standing up and be accounted for.
Yeah. If anyone has been affected by listening to this episode, Jess and I will put support helplines in the show notes.
Yeah. And if you are a true crime fan and you enjoyed this episode, let us know. I do want to do another episode like this because I have one other Brisbane homegrown crime that people might know about.
Ooh.
Bit infamous in itself, but well done, Lo.
Thank you.
On your research.
Thanks,
this was
baby.
a good episode.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose until next week,
You better remember to
stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.